I'm Victoria Wright. I am a Senior Certification Officer in Department of Procurement Services. I do actually do audits for applications. This is Maria Prado. She works for an accounting agency that actually helps with our processing of files because we do get a lot of files. So some files go out to Prado Accounting. She's going to do a portion of the presentation, and I will switch over to her when we start talking about what type of financial documents and everything you need to have with the application. But before we get started, I sort of like to find out who the people in the room, are you certified, and what business that you're in. So I'm going to start over here and then go over here just so if I need to, when I get to the end, I can refer to whatever business that you're in and talk about that. So can we start right here? Okay, so you're not certified yet? Okay. You the engineer? Okay, very good. Okay. All right. So just to get started. So Department of Procurement Services is the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the City of Chicago. We work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. So that's a long paragraph to say that basically we purchase everything for the 30 different city departments in the City of Chicago. So we purchase everything from toilet paper to landscaping, the flowers in the middle of the street, the curbs, construction, anything you can think of just about the City of Chicago purchases. And if we don't purchase it, one of our sister agencies purchase it. So even if you don't use the certification with us, you could use it with another department. So what we do, DPS is committed to providing information, resources, and tools to assist you in the efforts to compete for City of Chicago contracting opportunities as well as other city departments or sister agencies. We accept and review new applications for certification. You have to do an annual no change affidavit, and you have to do a recertification every 5 years, which I'll go into more detail about the no change and the recertification as well. So procurement is the contract compliant. We do contract compliance with negotiated contractual MWV, DBE participation goals, and basically that just means that there's a set aside for minorities and women on most local contracts, as well as the DBE and the ACDBE are federal contracts. We set standards for contract participation for M&W and BEPD and VBEs, as well as DBE and ACDBEs, and I'm going to go over what all those acronyms mean. We assist vendors through our website, which is the cityofchicago.org/procurement, and the software or the website to actually do your online application is chicago.mwdbe.com. So City of Chicago certification. You submit applications online only at this time. We used to take hard copy applications. We do not anymore. You have to scan your documents and upload your documents into our C2 system. We do have assistance with that through BACP if you need help with scanning documents. If you have questions about what documents you need to submit, there's another city department called Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. They are on the 8th floor in this building. You can set up an appointment in BACP to get help with your application. The application fee is $250. There's no fee for DBE or ACDBE. We only accept certified checks, cashier's checks, or money orders. There's a new process now also with paying the $250. You have to wait till you receive an invoice to pay the $250. So we used to take the money orders and cashier checks down here in our office. But now once you hit submit and you submit the online application, you will receive an invoice. Once you get the invoice, you will take it to one of the city payment centers, like down here on the first floor in City Hall or anywhere where you can pay a city ticket, and you pay the $250. The invoice also has an address on it, I believe, right, that you could actually mail it in, but most people don't want to mail it in because that could take longer for us to receive it. So we do recommend walking it into a city payment center. Once you pay the $250 is when we actually start, or we will receive it. So if we haven't received your $250, it'll be in the system, but we're not going to receive it. So we are waiting until we get acknowledgement from our finance department that you paid the $250 before we'll receive the application. So all the acronyms. So MBE is minority-owned business enterprise. WBE is women-owned business enterprise. VBE was just started maybe 6 months ago. Is the veteran-owned business enterprise. BEPD is the businesses owned by people with disabilities enterprise. DBE is disadvantaged business enterprise, and ACDBE is airport concessions disadvantaged business enterprise. And like I said, most of the federal program is the DBE and the ACDBE. If you want to have a concession at the airport, that's the ACDBE. And if you're doing construction or some other type of work at the airport, then it's DBE. Aviation has their own, what they call it, business summits, where they let people know what contracts are coming out at the airport. So if you keep an eye on the aviation website, they do have events themselves that let people know what type of contracts are coming out for the airport. BEPD for businesses owned by people with disabilities. That requires that you actually are documented as having a disability. You can't just tell us you have a disability. You have to go through the mayor's office for people with disabilities. You have to have your doctor fill out a form to be able to prove that you actually have a disability. So VBE, which is the veteran-owned business enterprise, is the newest certification that we have in the city of Chicago. I think the county has had the veteran certification for a while. So veteran means a person who has served in the United States Armed Forces and was discharged or separated under not dishonorable conditions. So basically an honorable discharge. And the forms that you have to submit to get the VBE are the DD-214 or the DD-215. It is needed as supported documentation that you're actually a veteran. If you need to contact the Veterans Affairs Administration, you can to get that document. And you should know if you already have MBE and WBE, and that's, I guess you all haven't started yet, but we do tell people if you're already MBE and WBE, you can always add the VBE and just make sure you do an expansion request and submit those, the DD-215. So veteran-owned business enterprise means an enterprise which is at least 51% owned by one person that is a veteran. Or in the case of a publicly held corporation, at least 51% of all classes of the stock of which is owned by one or more veterans, who manages and controls the management policies, major decisions, and daily business operations. 2, the BBE has been certified by the city as a veteran-owned and small local business, certified by Cook County as a veteran business enterprise, because like I said, they also have the VBE, certified by the state of Illinois as a qualified service-disabled veteran-owned small business, or as a qualified veteran-owned small business pursuant to the reg, or is verified and approved by the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. Veteran-owned business enterprise, if you are already, and I just went over there, if you're already MBE and WBE, you can still do an expansion request to become VBE. So the benefits of certification. It provides visibility. Once certified, your firm is listed in our directory, which is accessible to the general public. And this is, we were just talking about this right before class. At the top of our web page, there's an icon for MBE, WBE certified firms. So once you are approved, you automatically go into the database. How do we use the database? If there's a prime that's looking for a sub and they claim they cannot find one, we send them to the directory. We always direct people to the directory when they're looking for a small business to work with. So you automatically are in the database once you're approved. Okay. There are minority, women, veteran, and disadvantaged business participation goals on City of Chicago projects and sister agencies, which basically means that for local programs, there's a set-aside for minorities and women. So most of the contracts with the city, there is some type of set-aside. And I always try to tell people other agencies have a set-aside as well. So don't stop with the City of Chicago. The buying plan is the best example of all the departments that have a set-aside, because the buying plan is, I think it's like 10 different agencies and their procurement, what they're going to procure in the next 12 months. So they have set-asides. And what's not in that book that I try to tell people when I do your business is certified now what, is don't forget hospitals, don't forget universities. All of these places have set-asides. So don't stop with the City of Chicago. There are businesses in the private sector that seek out certified firms for products and or services. So that's like the hospitals, the universities, nursing homes. All of these places are usually looking for minority businesses, but it's up to you to do your homework to make sure you know not just what contracts they have, but what is their procurement process. On this, also on the benefits, as I always tell people, put that on your business card, put that on your capability statement. If you have a venue or an office, you can put it on your window. You know, we don't have an official seal for MBE, WBE. You can make it up or you can find one online, but you should use that in your advertising. So the City of Chicago has a target market program which provides exclusive bidding to certified minority and women-owned business enterprises. This allows certified businesses to take 100% of the contract because there are no subcontractor goals associated with the project. So basically what that means is that, for one, you don't have to be certified to bid on a city contract. So if the contract is small enough and you believe that you can do the job by yourself, you don't need the certification. And what I mean by that, if it's a $10,000 contract and you feel like you can handle a $10,000 contract by yourself, you just bid. You don't have to be the sub. But if it's a $10 million contract and you know you can't handle $10 million alone, that's when you try to pursue the sub position. So a lot of times, if it's a construction project, they have pre-bid meetings. You need to attend the pre-bid meeting. Because if you can't bid, more than likely the people who are going to bid are at the pre-bid meeting. So you should be at the pre-bid meeting to find out who's bidding. That's your time to pass out your business card, That's your time to pass out your capability statement. Construction projects are more than just construction. On the construction site, they might need a fence, they might need security, they might need signage. You never know, they might be looking for an accountant. You know, so that's your time to try to get in the room with people that are going to bid. And that's your time to be able to socialize with these people, because your main goal is to get a meeting with those people. So you come to the pre-bid meetings to find out who's there and to make sure that you can get with them, to find out if you can partner with them, can you become a sub. That's your time to interact with them. So, and I wanted to give an example of a target market. So I think more recently we had an IT target market. So they were looking for people in the IT industry to bid, but you had to already be certified. But the bid only went out to those people who were small businesses. So that's what we mean by target market. So it's good to be in the target market pool because you're already certified, and they're not even going to put it out to the big companies that can handle $10 million. They're only putting it out to the small businesses. So that helps when you are certified, because you will be in the pool if a target market ever comes out for your industry. So do you qualify? The qualifying groups are African Americans, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, women, veterans, persons with disabilities, and other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. What does that mean? So we did have a woman who was WBE certified, but she was from Iran, and we didn't include that in the group of minorities. So she did have to go to our affirmative action board. She had to present why she felt like she had been economically and socially disadvantaged. So she had to prove it to us that she should have the M. And I don't know what she did in the presentation because I wasn't there, but she got the M. So there, I mean, you in this room, all of you would qualify, but if it was another nationality, they do have the opportunity to prove that they have been socially and economically disadvantaged. Your business must be a local business. Your principal place of business and majority of full-time workforce has to be located in the counties of Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, or Will County. DBE and ACDBE can be anywhere in Illinois. You have to have a principal place of business, and it is okay if you have a home office. You can have a home office. A lot of times what we're seeing lately too is people doing shared office space. That's like the WeWorks offices, and where you just have a really small space and you're sharing the workspace. But it's okay to both have a home office or a shared office. We will not accept a P.O. box on the application. You have to have an actual place of business. Do you qualify? 51% owned, controlled, and managed by a minority, woman, veteran, or persons with a disability or socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. We just had a really crazy call today about the 51%, because it must have been a couple and they were trying to do 50-50. We always try to say marriage is 50-50. We know that's not true. But but in certification, if you want the W, you cannot be 50-50, even if you're husband and wife. If you want the W, the woman has to have 51%. If you just want the M and it's a husband and wife, yes, you can be 50-50. Can't ask for the W if you're 50-50. If you want the W, the wife has to have 51%. And this lady was on the phone asking 10, 12 questions about that one thing. She has to have the 51%, okay, if you want the W. The other thing that we get a lot of with the 51% is um, we want the woman to be able to control and manage the business. So um, I had a disposal company, and it was a woman, but her father had owned the business before she owned it. And she's not necessarily going out in the truck and picking up the garbage, but when I did the site visit, this lady knew it backwards and forwards. She knew the business. But, you know, the woman has to have that control. She has to be able to do all of the main duties in that business. She should be able to say if they did something wrong on those trucks. It would depend on whatever industry is, but, you know, if something goes wrong, she should be able to explain it. She should be able to speak to that industry with intelligence. If you're an electrician, even though if you're hiring union electricians, you should understand that industry. You should be able to understand electrical, even if you're not the one going out to do it. So we get a lot of WBEs where we have to drill down a little deeper because we want to make sure that the woman understands the industry. So if you get your application and we're asking questions, that's why we're asking, because we want to make sure that the woman is actually the one controlling everything and nobody behind the scenes is controlling it for her. And I'm going to say that could go with the M too, because if there's a minority and a non-minority, we want to make sure the non-minority is not controlling the minority. So it goes both ways. Okay. So the MBE, WBE, VBE must be an established business. I'm not sure if that sentence is right. I read over that a couple of times. So you could be a small business, and when we say established business, we usually mean that you have gone over the gross receipts limit. So I probably need to check that. But the gross receipts must not exceed $38 million, averaged over 3 years for non-construction firms. Construction firms, subject to the SBA size standards, are averaged over 5 years. So when all of you all get to 38 million, because everybody in here is going to get to 38 million, right? I'm going to come look for you guys. And DBE is not to exceed 23.9 million and or the SBA size standard averaged over 3 years. ACDBE is not to exceed 56 million for most firms. Some exceptions do exist for that, for ACDBE. Do you qualify with your personal net worth standard? So MBE, WBE, VBE, the threshold only applies to construction companies and is currently 2.3 million. I think that says 2.2 million up there, doesn't it? I believe it's 2.3. Isn't it 2.3 now? Yeah, it's 2.3 million. This is evaluated annually by the City of Chicago, so that number does go up. DBE and ACDBE, the threshold applies to all people seeking certification and is currently at 1.3 million. This is adjusted periodically by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So basically, if you're a construction company and you're doing a no change affidavit, we're going to need a P&W. And that's just basically what your income is compared to what is going out. And Maria's going to talk about that in more detail. The calculation of personal net worth excludes the value of your primary residence and interest in certified firms. So if you're a person that has a lot of different property, we're not counting the property that you live in, but the other property that you own is considered income or money that you have in your property. So yeah, Maria will go into detail about that. What we need from you is your contact information, the type of certification you're seeking. You do not want us to have to guess. This is more important for women. If you're doing the W and you're a minority, do the M at the same time. And it's still $250. So if you're a minority woman, do both. It's still $250. We have people who forget to do the M or they forget to do the W. Then they have to do an expansion. I always recommend if you're a minority woman doing both at the same time. BEPD requires the Schedule G. That's where I said you have to go to the mayor's office for people with disability to get that form filled out. And the VBE requires the DD 214 or 215. We need ownership information, employee information, facility information, financial information, and licenses. So, ownership information. What type of company are you? Are you a corporation, an LLC, an S Corp? You should have all that decided before you fill out the application. Do you have employees? If you don't have employees, and I'm going to say this up front, if there's anything you don't have, you have to let us know you don't have it. Don't leave it blank. You don't want us to have to guess. You just put it on a sheet of paper or a piece of letterhead and just say, I don't have any employees, therefore I don't have any payrolls. If you don't have any equipment, you need to let us know. Now, if you're a company that should have equipment and you tell us you don't have any, then you're probably going to get another question. Or why don't you have any equipment? Or do you have a plan to get equipment? Or do you have an agreement with some other company that once you get a contract, you'll get the equipment? But don't leave any question blank because you don't want us to have to guess. Facility information, that goes back to your place of business, what's your address. For anybody who hasn't started their business yet and you're looking for a facility, I always recommend people to go to Business Affairs and Consumer Protection before you sign a lease. Because depending on what type of industry you're in, can always depend on if your business should be in that location. You have to remember, I didn't hear anything in here when you all said what you were doing, but you have to remember that you can't sell alcohol in certain areas, can't sell alcohol near schools or daycares. There was a company that signed a lease for a car wash and then found out afterwards he couldn't have a car wash in that area. He had already signed a lease. So I always recommend, depending on what you're doing, if it's just a regular office, usually you can have, well, maybe not, because if you're in a residential area, you might not be able to have a business office in a residential. So Business Affairs and Consumer Protection has a website to help you decide where you should have your place of business. Licenses. This has come up very important in our office recently. If you're in an industry that should have a license, have the license before you apply. Because if you decide to apply for something that's electrical or plumbing and you don't have that license, you're going to be denied. And we do not give the $250 back for anything. The city is not giving your $250 back. Even if you're denied, you're not getting your $250 back. But if you're in a company, industry that should have a license, please make sure you get the license before you apply. And make sure your contact information is correct. So if you don't put the right phone number or the right email address in, that's a problem, because if we try to reach you and then we don't reach you, it's not our fault, because we're using whatever contact information you put in the system. We are looking for your resume, and that's a detailed resume with education and work history. I got a resume that basically was written just to make the owner sound really, really great. But it didn't tell me anything about his education or where he had worked prior to his own company. Evidence of executed contracts or invoices, paid invoices. So we want to know that anybody could write an invoice. You can write an invoice to me saying I owe you money, but if I didn't pay you, then that invoice is sort of null and void. So if you submit invoices, we need to show that you got paid for those invoices. If you don't have contracts and invoices, that's okay. You just have to tell us you don't have any contracts yet. But then we're going to be looking heavily at your resume to see what you did in your past that makes you qualified for the codes that you're asking for. We need a driver's license, a birth certificate, your proof of equity contribution, which is basically how much money did you put in your business bank account, because you definitely should have a business bank account, not your personal bank account. So we want to see that you put $50, $100, $500. How much money did you put in the bank to start your bank account? The business bank account, and who's the signature on your business bank account? So if you are, have a partner, it's okay for the partner to have signature. They should be the second signature on there. But we might get a question of why is the second person on there. Or if it's somebody who doesn't even own the company and we're looking at it and we're like, well, wait, who is this? Why is there somebody on your bank signature that we don't know who it is or you haven't identified who that person is? Org chart, because we want to know who's working with you. Equipment list, and that goes back to if you're in an industry that needs equipment, we want to see that you actually have equipment. If you're a landscaper and you don't have anything to do landscape, that's a red flag for us. And even if you're just something, if it's an office type of job, your equipment is your computer. Your equipment is your laptop. It's your desk. It's your chair. That's equipment. You have an office. And if we need to know if you have any loan information. Loan information can point to the fact that if somebody else loaned you money and you haven't paid it back, so that can be considered questionable if you took out a loan with someone and you haven't paid them back. And I'm going to say this because we have run into this. If you took a loan from somebody and you paid them back, do not pay them back in cash. That you cannot prove that you paid them back. If you had a loan for $120,000 and you said, well, I just gave them $120,000 in cash. Really? So that's not even just for us. It's your own safety because you want to be able to prove that you paid that person back. So even if you work in cash, get a receipt or something, but we don't recommend that you use just cash for that. So now I am going to turn this section over to Maria, and she's going to talk about the financial documents that you need, and she will stick around if you have questions afterwards. We both will, but she will help you if you have questions about anything that she talks about.
Thank you, Victoria.
And I'm going to tell you the easiest way is to look at that TV
All right.
when you click.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. So again, my name is Maria Prado, and I am the managing partner for Prado and Renteria CPAs. I will be covering the financial section, and I'll be covering the different types of business structures. So I'll start with the financial documents that are required by the city. And why does the city request that you present corporate and individual tax returns? So one reason is that the tax returns demonstrate that your business has been in operation. The tax returns demonstrate that there's been some financial activity of your business. The tax returns may also demonstrate the ownership depending on the type of business structure that you have selected. And they may also corroborate your net worth that you are reporting on the personal net worth statements. The next item is Form 4506T. What is this form? This is an IRS form that is used to retrieve past tax returns that are filed with the IRS. This form needs to be signed and dated by the applicant, and it also needs to show the type of tax return that you're authorizing to be requested by the city in case the city requests it. And this could be a 1040 if it pertains to your individual tax return, or it could be the 1120 if it's a corporate tax return. It's whatever tax return the city is requesting. The next item is W-2s and 1099s. And first of all, W-2s are used to report the wages that are paid by the business to each of its employees. 1099s are the forms that reflect the payments that the business makes to independent contractors, consultants, or law firms. The personal net worth statement. I want to go into a little bit of detail on what this is. The personal net worth statement reflects all of the assets you own and the liabilities, and then the calculation of assets minus liabilities gives you your net worth. So again, as Victoria mentioned, the personal net worth statement excludes your personal residence, and it also excludes your interest in the applicant firm. If you own other companies, it does not exclude the interest in other companies. A little bit of what assets are. Assets include your savings accounts, checking accounts, investments, retirement accounts, real estate investments, and interest in other companies. And as I review each of the different types of corporate structures, I will touch on how do you prove your equity contribution under each of these corporate structures, and also on whether you should have a separate bank account, or what the bank account can tell you. So in the first type of corporate structure, the sole proprietor. The sole proprietor is typically owned by only one person, and it doesn't have a specific legal existence apart from the person, him or herself. You must have an assumed name certificate if you are operating under a name other than your own. If you are operating under your own name, you do not have to have an assumed name certificate. With a sole proprietor, you are not required to have a separate bank account. The IRS doesn't require that you have one, but it is a good business practice for you to have a separate bank account. So how would you demonstrate your equity contribution to this business? You can demonstrate it with your initial bank account deposit. That would be your initial contribution to your business. Or it can also be the assets that you might have contributed to the business, which may include furniture or equipment. When you first start a business, you may actually contribute your personal assets. You may have a computer that you start using for business purposes and then contribute it to the business. Or you may have furniture that you might have been using for personal / business purposes before you started the company. And once you start the company, you can actually transfer that to the business. So that would be part of your equity contribution. Any assets that you contribute to your business, including cash. Under a general partnership, you would have 2 or more people going into business together without any formalities. And it is a good business practice for you to have a partnership agreement. In this type of entity, the same thing would apply as with a sole proprietorship. You don't have to have a specific dollar amount of your contribution, and your bank account could support that contribution, whatever you contribute to the business. What's most common in a general partnership is a husband and wife business, and each of them may contribute to the business. The next corporate structure is a corporation. And a corporation is treated as an entity that's completely separate from its shareholders. and it allows others to invest in the business without being liable for the debts of the business. The corporation must be in good standing with the state, and you must have articles of incorporation. You must have a certificate of incorporation, you must have bylaws, and you must have copies of the stock certificates that are issued by the corporation. You must also have minutes of meetings that are held by the board of directors. So how would you prove equity contribution under a corporate structure? Under a corporate structure, your equity contribution would be consistent with the articles of incorporation. Normally, the articles of incorporation describe the type of stock that's issued by the corporation and how much is being contributed just to start the corporation. So your equity contribution would need to match at least the amount that's described in the articles of incorporation. You could have a larger equity contribution, but it must be at least the amount that's in the articles of incorporation. The stock certificates also demonstrate the amount that each of the stockholders is contributing to the business. So you may have 2 or 3 or many shareholders, and each one will get a stock certificate reflecting the number of shares that they are buying into the business and how much they are contributing to the business. How much they're paying actually for those stocks, for those shares. You could have different types of stock. You could have stock without a dollar value, or you could have stock with a defined dollar value. So in a corporate structure, it's important to follow the articles of incorporation, because the articles of incorporation tell you what type of stock the company has available to issue. So everything must be consistent. In the next business structure, it's the limited partnership. In a limited partnership, there are limited partners. They are more like stakeholders in a corporation, and they are not liable for debts beyond their own contribution. You must have an assumed name certificate or a certificate of limited partnership. I'm going to go on to the next one. These are pretty similar. The next business structure is the limited liability company, and this is sort of a partnership that has a managing member or partner. And a limited liability company must have an operating agreement. So usually the operating agreement defines the roles and responsibilities of each of the members, and it also indicates the amount of contribution that each of the members is making into the business. In all cases where you have a corporation, a company or partnership, you must have a separate bank account for the business. I went too far. One back. That's it. That's it. I see that it's 2:45. Victoria had asked me to mention something about the pros and cons of each of the different business structures. And I just want to touch on a little bit of the benefits, advantages or disadvantages, and just a little bit about the tax ramifications, the different types of under each of the structures. In a sole proprietorship, the advantage is that it's very easy to establish a business as a sole proprietor because you don't have to fill out any legal paperwork. The other part that's advantageous is the tax reporting. You don't have to file a separate tax return. Everything is reported under your own personal tax return. It's just a separate schedule that's part of your personal tax return. When you start to move into a partnership in a corporation, there's different treatment for both for taxes and for the legal structures. The general partnership doesn't have to have a formality in terms of a legal structure, but for tax purposes, a general partnership must file a separate tax return. And that tax return demonstrates who the owners are, and it also shows the percentage of, I guess, profit or loss that's attributed to each of the owners. And the owners will pay tax at the personal level on a general partnership structure. Even though there is a separate tax return for the partnership, the tax is paid by the owners. Under the corporate structure, you can have one or the other in terms of tax treatment. You could have the company pay its own taxes, or you could have the individual owners pay the taxes on behalf of the corporation. And there's advantages and disadvantages under each. You must file a separate tax return for a corporation. Under a limited liability company and a limited liability partnership, you must file a separate tax return, and you could pay tax as a corporation or as a partnership. So you could pay tax as, the company could pay the tax, or the tax could be paid by the owners. And that would have to be something that you look into very carefully when you first start the business, depending on who your shareholders are or members are to that particular business. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Victoria again.
So Maria's going to stay afterwards, because one thing is that on this section of the on the workshop is we use, if you haven't established what type of business you want to be, we tell people to try to get with Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. So Business Affairs will actually assign a business manager to you. And I mean, we work together, we're on the same floor, but I always tell people, BACP is where you go when you're getting established, and procurement is where you come once you're established and you started a business and you're looking for business. Because they help you decide which one of these you should be. They help you get your corporation papers together. A lot of people start the business, they might not have stock certificates. They might not understand about meeting minutes. If it's just one person, you can still have a meeting. It's just you. And you have to take notes of what you decided for your business. A meeting doesn't have to be two people. But they explain all of that, and afterwards Maria is going to stay. And I also recommend a lot of times that if you don't understand it completely, get an accountant. You don't have to have an accountant on, record forever, but it helps when you're ready to do your certification application so that everything is in order. I always tell people to keep everything scanned. That's the best thing for any business, is to scan your documents so that you don't lose any documents. And then when you need to see an accountant or you need to see a lawyer, you already have everything. But I'm going to try to get through the rest of this so that I can take questions. Okay. So we do certify suppliers and distributors. We do not certify brokers. And I'm going to let you all read the difference between a supplier and distributor. The thing with a broker is that you don't have, a broker usually does not have inventory. So a broker is usually a person that, say, this lady wanted to buy socks, and she came to me to buy socks, but I just bought it from somebody in another country and shipped it to her. I never kept the socks. So that you have no warehouse, you have no inventory. So we do not certify brokers. So you can read the difference, and I didn't hear anybody in the room to say that they were a supplier, a distributor, or a broker. So I want to talk about what happens after the application. So the process can take approximately 90 days from the day we receive all documents. So the most important thing is if you get a request for information after you submit it, and your application will be assigned to an officer like myself. We have 6 or 7 officers, I can't remember the number right now, but if they contact you, answer as quickly as possible. Because once we get all the documents, we tell you it could take 90 days. It could definitely take less than 90 days. Your application is checked to make sure we have all documentation. Documents are thoroughly audited, so don't think we're not looking at something, because we usually are. Maria's group is really good at looking at taxes. Look, you may receive a site visit. All construction companies receive a site visit, and all DBE applications receive a site visit. If approved, your certification is valid for 5 years. After the 5 years, you do have to do a recertification, and you do pay the $250 again. Annually, you do a no-change affidavit. And basically, the no-change affidavit is letting us know that anything changed. It's only about 6 or 7 questions on a no-change affidavit, but you do have to keep up with the dates that your no-change affidavit is due, okay? We do have an expedited process in recognition of outside certifications with the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council and the Women in Business Development Center. You do pay these agencies to do your certification, and then you still have to pay us. So the only thing is that these applications might rise to the top, but it still could take 30 days for us to get through it, because we're still going to ask you questions. So it's up to you if you want to use one of these agencies before you come to us. Maintaining, I just went over the no change affidavit that you must do annually, and you must recertify every 5 years. So once you get certified and you decide that you want more NAICS codes, you can do an expansion request. So an expansion request, you have to submit your request on the company letterhead, include added categories from the NAICS codes that you want, and you have to include proof that you can perform in the codes that you're asking for. So if you're a painter and you decide you want to go to drywall or framing, you have to submit information to say that you can do whatever it is that you say you can do. So if you need a license, we need the license. Any contracts or invoices, if you need insurance, and if a resume will prove that you can do the NAICS codes, we need the resume. So I've got a couple of minutes. So basically, I always tell people on this slide is a good slide to keep, because these are other people that you should check for contracts. And the secret is, if you're doing a Google search, if you put in www, one of these names, / procurement, you put procurement behind it, their procurement contracts will come up. But you have to learn their process, because everybody's process of procurement is different. We might want you to put your bid in by 10 a.m. One of those agencies might want you to have it in by 9 a.m. So don't think that whatever our system is the same for these other agencies. You have to learn their systems. They usually have emails that go out to tell people you have to get on these lists. If they're having an event, you have to show up for the event. I just gave phone numbers, but it's always best to check their websites. So avoiding the top reasons applications are denied is unsubstantiated or questionable ownership and control. That goes back to if there's a non-minority in the background and we think that the non-minority is controlling things, that can be an issue. Unclear description of critical function and who is responsible. The company cannot substantiate where and or how startup funds expansion capital was initiated. That goes back to, where did you get that $120,000 if just yesterday you were broke? So we want to know where that money came from. The outside secondary employment takes the majority of the MBE, WBE, VBE, BEPD, DBE Enterprise time each day. We're not saying that you cannot have another job, because we know that sometimes when you start a small business, you still have to work. But we might ask you in the RFI, explain to me how you do your business even though you're still working. So we don't want to scare people away and think, no, you cannot feed your kids because you're starting a business. It's just that we want to know how you're doing it. The company is not located in one of the 6 county regions, and that is a definite denial. 10 reasons so applications are denied. The point of contact did not respond. We close your application if you don't respond because that's considered non-responsive. Inconsistencies with the applicant firm name among various documents. Problems with contracts missing, incomplete, not signed or executed by qualifying owners or have no corresponding proof of payments. Required documents are not attached or no explanation is given why. That's why I said if you don't have it, just say you don't have it. 3 to 5 years of tax returns were not submitted signed as required. If you don't have 3 years because you've only been in business 1 year, you have to tell us that. You've only been in business 6 months, tell us that. We don't sign our taxes very often anymore because everybody does electronic filing, but when you send it to us, it should be signed. That just means that you printed it out, signed it, and then scanned it. It's just you acknowledging that those are your taxes, and that's actually what you turned in to the IRS. When Maria talked about the 4506T, we take that because we can use it to get some tax returns from the IRS. I can't remember a time that we've done it, but it's still a requirement. So you have to submit it, doesn't mean we're going to use it. But we can use it once you sign it if we don't believe the tax returns that you sent us are not true or what you actually turned in to the IRS. Where to go to help, I cannot stress this enough. I had an event one day last week. The best place to come for help is the Department of Procurement Services. We do have assist agencies in different communities. Some assist agencies are better than other assist agencies. But an assist agent could be a chamber of commerce in your neighborhood. But the best place to get your question answered is at 744-4900, which is our office. Okay. And then if you need a consultant, the consultant is Stephanie Edmonds. She's the one I was saying that will help you scan your documents. She can answer questions, and it's by appointment only. And her phone number is on that page. Questions, quick questions. Well, we're gonna use this microphone right here. Thank y'all.
Unless you want to take them offline.
You wanna take it offline? Okay.
Just want me to use this?
You still want him to use the mic, Millie? No. Oh, okay. Go ahead.